Hello everyone, I'm Heta Desai, PGT Biology in Guru Kripa Vidya Sankul. Today in this video, we are going to learn about body fluid and circulation. Students, what you can say, how many types of fluids are there in our body? There are two types of fluid in our body. One is blood and the other is lymph. Right? So this both kind of system which will be there in our body is known as liquid connective tissue. This liquid connective tissue circulate all the types of components which have been responsible for different metabolic activities in our body, especially the hormones, the nutrients, the body waste, all are being transported by both of these circulatory systems in our body. You can say there are two types of body tissues, or you can see tubes, which you can see here. They are veins and arteries. These veins and arteries, when combined to form lymphs here, right? So togetherly they can form a proper circulatory system in which all those fluids and all those components which are required in a body to be transferred. Now, can you name those all components, right? In human bloods is being transported. You can say the human blood is transported sometime the nutrient, even the gases like O2 and CO2 and other component like wastes. So these all components are being transported and reaches to all the parts of our body. Now let's see what is the composition of this own human blood, right? There are two parts in human blood composition, right? One is called blood plasma and the other is called blood cell. This blood plasma is pale yellow colored fluid. You can see here this pale yellow color fluid which will actually call blood plasma. This blood plasma contains approximately 90% of water. And rather than that, there are so many nutrients which have been inculcated inside it, like some salt, some proteins, some other kind of component, nutrients, all have been carried here in blood plasma, right? This blood plasma need to be rich in all those kind of components, and our body will be inculcated by these all components, right? This blood plasma is having no component inside, right? And that's why it is just pale yellow colored. No color pigments have been present here in blood plasma. Then why our blood is red? Our blood is red just because of there are so many different types of cells which have been placed inside the blood. That's why the blood is red. Here you can see the blood plasma is having some excessive role, some competitive role in our body. Right? There are three different types of cells which we'll discuss further are WBCs, RBCs and some platelets. We'll discuss this afterward. But whenever the blood plasma is floating there inside, like this is a blood capillary, and when in blood capillary it is moving, right, the blood plasma will reach with all the component and can pour this inside a body parts. Right? The blood serum, the blood plasma is actually in a form of serum which will be contain some specific types of proteins, right? And those all proteins have been there in our body, may be in form of some fibrinogens, right? Some fibrin component, major and minute. Then we are having three different types of cell. One are WBCs which have been fighters, one are RBCs which have been responsible for gas circulation, and platelets, right? They have been responsible for our blood clotting. So students, these are the three main kinds of cell which have been there present inside blood plasma, which we'll call serum. Now if you'll see that the formation of a blood is the basic structure, or you can see the basic composition of equal composition of blood plasma and these all cells. The amount of cells are different in different individuals, right? But they are having some specific range, and by following those all range, we are having these all three types of cells which have been present in our body, namely erythrocyte which are called RBCs, thrombocytes which are called platelets, and leukocytes, which are called WBCs, and rest of the composition is of plasma. So this is what actually a blood is, the equal composition of plasma and all three types of cells. Now let's going further talk about RBC in a detail. Why RBCs are there? Why a blood looks red color? Yeah, you're very right. A blood is red just because of the RBCs which are present in our body. The RBCs are especially responsible for gas circulation, right? The two gases which have been very important in our body, namely O2 and CO2, is being transported in our body by this RBCs. The RBCs are actually formed in our bone marrow. Bone marrows which have been present inside our long bones like our skull or thymus bone, which is called femur, or thigh bone, which is actually called femur, right? Sometime in our arm bones, right? And sometime in our backbone also, this bone marrows have been present, and these bone marrows are called factories of our RBC. So whatever the RBCs have been present in our body, they are actually formed in this red colored bone marrow, which are present inside the cavity of these long bones. The long bone marrows, you can see here, you can see that the bone marrows are look like this, right, present into our long bones, right. There have been some spongy bones. Our bones are always spongy, right, which have been having this all bone marrows inside, right. If you see its magnetic field, right, magnetic areas, it will be look like this. The bone marrows have been situated inside the long bones. Now let's see the structure of RBCs. The RBCs are actually look like biconcave, right? As in you have joined both the concave lens together. So that's why they are look like disc shape and biconcave with no nucleus. This is very important. RBCs are not having any nucleus. Though they are animal cell, they don't have any nucleus inside. So when they are first formed there in bone marrow, they were living animal cells, but afterward when they start coming into blood streams, they lost their nucleus and become nucleusless. Now why this thing happened? The surface area of RBC is responsible for these two gases, O2 and CO2 circulation. Now this O2 and CO2 need to be circulated in our body with the help of the hemoglobin, which is present inside our RBCs, and this hemoglobin is actually called respiratory pigment. Respiratory pigment. This respiratory pigment is responsible for circulation of O2 and CO2 in our body. So this oxygen will bind itself with hemoglobin and then circulate itself into bloodstream. So this oxygenated blood will move from our heart to the body parts and become deoxygenated, and again this deoxygenated blood will move from our body parts to heart to get oxygen, right, and this deoxygenated blood will carry then afterward to the lungs to get oxygenated, right. So this is all cycle, and that's why our blood circulatory system is called double circulatory system. Now as I told you, the hemoglobin, which is a protein present in our RBC, responsible for the transportation of these both gases, right. You can see the structure of hemoglobin, which will look like this. Hemoglobin is a complex protein in which there are two types of protein chains have been present. One is called alpha chain, which will be two chains are there, and one is called beta chain, which is also been two chains. Right, the two chains of alpha and two chains of beta togetherly form hemoglobin molecules. Right, hemoglobin is a tertiary level of protein by which our blood is responsible for circulating O2 and CO2 in our body. Then afterward, the normal, let's see the age and the number of, or you can say the amount of hemoglobin in each level of or age groups of human beings. If the human female, right, is of normal age group, right, they are having approximately 14 grams per day hemoglobin is present. You can see here for female, right. As in the age is increasing, right, the male and the female, the number of hemoglobin need to be increased, right. And in newborn, the number of so the amount of hemoglobin is especially more, right, then it getting lesser by the ages, right? And it will be minimum 10 ml DIL in normal female, right? It should be, if it will be below to that, right, they will be formed, or you can say they will be inculcated by a disease called anemia. Anemia is a loss of, or you can say less of hemoglobin in anyone's body. So if you don't want to suffer with this anemia, you have to eat kind of food by which you will get the hemoglobin protein in your body, right? So by that, you will enrich yourself, enrich your body with hemoglobin. Now, these RBCs are having life of 120 days only. Yes, you heard it very right. The RBCs which have formed themselves in a bone marrow can be lived only for 120 days. And afterward, what have happened? This RBC will move to an organ named spleen, which is situated down to the stomach in our body, right? You can see that here. This is the placement of spleen, which is situated down to your stomach, and the dead RBC, or you can say the aged RBC, will move toward the spleen and died itself here. So whatever the iron molecules, you can say the hemoglobin is having iron in a maximum amount. That's why only the hemoglobin look red. Then that of that, right, they are having globin named component, right, and they all been, and bile named component. So they all components have been inculcated, or you can say dissolve here in the spleen, and the spleen will put those all dead RBCs, or you can say the dead bodies of RBCs, to the large intestine. So the useful things are being absorbed by spleen and again pour it into a bloodstreams, and the dead bodies, or you can say unused things, are being then transferred to the large intestine. And that's why the spleen is called graveyard of our body, in which the RBCs are getting buried. So that's why it is called graveyard, right? Now the second and very important cell which are present inside the blood are leukocytes. The leukocytes are commonly known as WBCs. The WBCs in our bodies are actually called fighters. Yes, you heard it very right. Our body is having a system named immunity system, and this immunity system will work only and only when these WBCs have been present proper. Right, so the leukocytes or the WBCs are very important in our body to fight against those all foreign materials which are enter in our body. So the WBCs are especially of two types. They have been A granules or granules. They are the two different types of, and with your great surprise, I can say that the WBCs are nucleated. They have nucleus in them. And just because of presence of this nucleus, the cells are living. RBCs were not having nucleus, so they were dead cells. But here, the WBCs or leukocytes are having nucleus inside, and that's why they are living cells. So, apart from that, the leukocytes or WBCs are of two types, A granules and granules. The granules and A granules, the main difference between these two are the granules of starch are present in granulated, and granules of starch are not present in agranulated types of WBCs. Now, the agranulated types of WBCs are having two different types of WBCs in them. The lymphocytes, which are amount of 20 to 25% in our bloodstream, and the monocytes, which are having only one globulated nucleus, right? So that's why their percentages are only 3 to 8 in our bloodstream. Rather than that, there are granulated, which are having three different types of WBCs apart, which have been having basophil, neutrophil and acidophils differentiated. The basophil, which are stained by basic components, are only 5 to 1%, right? The acidophils, which have been colored or been stained by acidic type of stainer, are 2 to 4%, and the neutrophil, which are not been stained by any of stainer, are 60 to 70%. Now you can see one very big difference amongst this WBCs, the nucleus, which are very important. Here the lymphocytes are having only single nucleus, right? Then the monocytes are having the nucleus bilobed kind of. The basophils are having also bilobe kind of nucleus. The acidophils are also bilobe nucleated, but the neutrophils are having multi-lobed nucleated. This is the speciality of WBCs, that the nucleus which are present inside are divided into different kinds of lobes, right? And it's a very important for your exam also. Now let's see which is the least and which is the abundant in a WBC in our blood with the WBC's kind. You can see the percentages are varies from one to another. Neutrophil, right, which will be 0.4 to 0.5. Then neutrophils which are folliculated nucleus, right? As I told you, the nucleus are different in them, which are little more 2 to 7%. Acidophils, which are very less in our bloodstream, is 0.02 to 0.5%. Basophil are the most less in our body, approximately nil to 0.1, I'm sorry. Monocytes which are little more from 0.12 to 8, and lymphocytes which are 0.8 to 4, which are the most and very much important. This lymphocytes, why they are very much present, their numbers are very high in our body, because the lymphocytes are responsible for phagocytosis process in our body. Now what is phagocytosis? Phagocytosis is the process in which the foreign material which will be enter in our body is get engulfed by those all cells. So this lymphocyte when engulf those all components which are been entering in our body, which are called foreign materials, right, and gives us a very great immune system. So that's why the lymphocytes are quite more and the others are similarly little less. Now how can I remember all these names, right? So just remember this name by this all, right? The sentence which is, or you can say the phrase which is given, never let monkey eat banana, and you will find all those name of WBCs abundantly. Now these are the different two kinds of nucleocytes and nucleus which have been present, and they are multinucleated. Now as I told you, the lymphocytes are doing this phagocytosis process. In this way they can eat up these all kind of microbes which are coming. Now two more types of WBCs, lymphocytes which are present. Lymphocytes are of mainly two types, and they are B cells and T cells. So the lymphocytes are doing one more important process. So this B cells and T cells are forming some important proteins in our body, namely antibodies. These antibodies are proteins which can fight against the foreign material entering in our body, and these antibodies have been formed by B cells, and the T cells are helping them in formation of this antibody. Here you can see the killing of these components have been inculcated in such way that the virus which are entering in our body, against them the B cells are forming antibodies, and these helper T cells are helping in forming the antibody. So this WBCs, lymphocytes which have been divided into these two parts, B and T cells, these are very important in our body. So again I am saying this, the lymphocytes are responsible for two important processes, the engulfment, in which they engulf the foreign material by the process of phagocytosis, and the other kind of lymphocytes like our B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes can make antibodies in our bodies by which the foreign materials can be killed, right? Then afterward, these monocytes and other erythrocytes and the components are responsible for various activities in our body. Now, have you ever heard that the clotting of blood? Yes, students, the clotting of blood, the process of clotting in our blood, whenever we'll get any wound, right, the wound will be healed by itself and the blood will clot. So this process in our body, which always been taken care by the component named thrombocytes. The thrombocytes is responsible in our body for the process of blood clotting. Now how it happens? The platelets are also cells without nucleus. Yes, and they are this kind of spindle shaped cells. These cells, when it comes to contact with air, this bursts itself and release a component named prothrombin. And some components which are present, or some protein which are present in our blood plasma, will convert it itself into fibrinogen fiber, and those all fiber are being arranged in bunch to form a clotting component, right? And this clotting component can then afterward stop the blood at your wound. So whenever the wound occurs and the platelets comes out in air, right, and burst, immediately the process of clotting starts. And the fibrinogen fibers are being arranged at the place of wound, and your wound get healed by clotting this. The thrombocytes or the platelets are quite so being arranged in between in a very less amount with those all WBCs and RBCs. This is the compositions of our bone marrow again by which our WBCs are being formed. The platelets, you can see those all arrangement of your platelets. Right? The platelets have been arranged in such manner that whenever any epithelial tissues are get damaged, here I told you the platelets have been moved out and do the process of blood clotting. So again, let's recap it whole chapter here till, right, we are having circulatory system in our body by which composed by two, blood and plasma. The blood and lymph. The blood is divided into two components, blood plasma and blood cells. Blood plasma is a pale yellow color component and blood cells are of three types, RBC, WBCs and platelets. RBCs are especially responsible for circulating gases in our body. WBCs are especially responsible for body immunity and platelets are responsible for the blood clotting process in our body. Okay, now in next session, we're going to talk about the human blood group. Why the humans are having different kinds of blood group in their bodies. So for till that, thank you so much and have a great day.